Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
Greetings, listeners. This is Paul J. McSorley, your host for Wednesday episodes of our flagship Chilling Tales for Dark Nights podcast and a proud member of the Chilling Entertainment family. Today I come to you not with a tale of terror, but with a story that's very close to our hearts, one that reflects the challenges we're facing currently. First and foremost, let me take a moment to thank you, our dedicated listeners, for your unwavering support over the years. For more than a decade, your passion has been the lifeblood of Chilling Entertainment, fueling our ability to deliver the spine-chilling stories and eerie experiences you love. But now we've reached a critical juncture, and we're turning to you for help. Our founder, Craig Groshek, has been navigating some incredibly tough personal challenges over the past few years. These difficulties, compounded by the financial strains that have hit the horror entertainment industry hard, have placed Chilling Entertainment in a precarious position. Despite all this, Craig's commitment to the Chilling Entertainment family, our talented writers, voice actors, sound designers, and everyone behind the scenes, remains steadfast. However, we've come to a point where we need your support to ensure that Chilling Entertainment not only survives, but continues to thrive. To address these challenges, we've launched a GoFundMe campaign with the goal of raising $10,000. While this amount is just a fraction of what's needed to fully overcome the obstacles we're facing, it's a vital first step in addressing our most urgent needs, including paying off debts and ensuring our team members are fairly compensated. Here's how your contribution can make a difference. Meeting immediate financial needs, ensuring our hardworking team members receive the payments they've earned despite the unexpected financial challenges we've encountered. Upgrading equipment and software, investing in the tools necessary to maintain the high-quality content you've come to expect from us. Reviving shelved projects, bringing back exciting new projects that have been postponed due to budget constraints, allowing us to continue pushing the boundaries of horror storytelling. Attracting and retaining top talent, keeping the best creators, writers, and voice actors in the industry working on the stories you love. Developing a new app, creating a more user-friendly platform to enhance your experience with our content. Without your support, we may face some tough decisions, reducing pay, losing valuable talent, and possibly cutting back on the quality and frequency of the content you enjoy. Some of our most beloved shows could even face temporary or permanent closure. You can assist us further by spreading the word. Share our campaign on social media, tell your friends and fellow horror fans about us, and help us reach more people who share our passion for the macabre. Every dollar, every share brings us one step closer to securing the future of Chilling Entertainment. Together, we can ensure that Chilling Entertainment continues to be your go-to source for the most haunting stories and unforgettable scares. Please consider donating today. Your support is invaluable, and with your help, we'll keep on turning off the light and turning on the dark for many years to come. Donate now on GoFundMe.
It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling tales for dark nights.
Good evening, listener. You're listening to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. On tonight's edition, we invite you to leave behind your safe reality and descend with us into the frightening depths of the most terrifying imaginations with 2 audio adaptations of frightening fiction about sinister setups and reflective revelations. I'm your host, Steve Taylor, and tonight I'll be your guide as we traverse the dimly lit corridors of your darkest dreams. Joining us tonight to help bring to life the frightening fiction of Ryan Major and Marcus Damanda are voice talents Michelle Kane, Nick Goroff, Danielle Hewitt, Melissa Medina, Geoff Sturtevant, and myself, Steve Taylor. Now, get your ticket ready, take your seat in our theater of the minds, and brace yourself. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Our first tale this evening is written by Ryan Major and performed by Michelle Kane and Nick Goroff. This story reminds me of the Pina Colada song, only much deadlier. Now, without further ado, I present to you She Loves Me Not.
Every time I found one of those damned yellow sticky notes on my monitor, I knew it would be a bad day. My secret admirer had that effect on me. The notes started out kind of charming. A few polite compliments about my clothing, a note about how kind and gentle my personality was. Little XOXO signatures at the bottom. Middle school crush stuff. It was a bit of an ego boost, but I was happily married. It had taken a while to get there, but that had been my fault. My wife Emily and I had a rough stretch a few years back after I'd had an affair, but we got things back on track. I thought of telling her about the notes, but I didn't want to worry her. The flirtatious post-its went into the trash and I moved on with my day. I didn't give the first dozen or so much thought. That was before they began to threaten me. The first note, that left me with an unsettling feeling, showed up 2 months after the first. Gone was the free-flowing, delicately curved handwriting. The heavy grooves gouged into the paper from the heavy block letters etched on the surface.
Why don't you ever answer me back? You could leave a note for me on your computer. It seems like you don't care. It's starting to make me angry. XOXO?
At first, I laughed it off before wadding up the note and tossing it in the trash. The idea of leaving a note for my admirer was ridiculous. They had never even mentioned wanting me to leave a reply before. Not that I would have. My hard-learned lesson about fidelity had taken root. 2 days later, when I arrived at work, there were 2 notes attached to my monitor. The first one was the angry message from a few days before. It had been uncrumpled and smoothed out. Underneath sat on clean, unwrinkled yellow paper.
You just wad up my messages and throw them in the trash? What the hell is wrong with you? You used to be something special to me, but now I see you're just like every other guy I've ever met. I was wrong about you. You're a piece of garbage. XOXO.
I felt a mixture of anger and relief at the note. Whoever this woman was, she didn't know me well enough to make judgment calls like that about me. At the same time, it seemed like this could be the end of the strange ordeal. That time, I put the notes in my pocket and tossed them into a trash can in the parking garage on my way home. Whoever was leaving them, they were checking the trash in my office. With any luck, they would move on and get over their fixation. No such luck. A few days later, there was another sticky note on my monitor. This time it was neon green. Had they written me so many damn notes that their yellow pad had run out? My throat tightened as I pulled it from the screen and read.
We all have our shortcomings, but I'm willing to forgive you. Please stop throwing away my notes. These little moments mean so much to me, and it hurts to know that you don't feel the same. That's okay, though. Your feelings for me will change with time. If they don't, I may have to hurt someone. XOXO.
I immediately took the note to the HR office. One of the reps read it, her eyebrows raised, and her head held back in surprise. She placed it on her desk and pulled off her reading glasses.
How long has this been going on, Paul?
She asked me in a concerned tone. I'm not sure exactly, I replied, scratching my head. They've left a dozen notes. 24 maybe. Do we have security cameras on the floor?
No,
she said, shaking her head.
No cameras, I'm afraid. Too expensive. Same reason they laid off the security officer in the building. Our company isn't exactly thriving, and the budget is tight.
She gave me a look of sympathy and told me to let her know if any more notes turned up. I nodded and told her I would. We both silently acknowledged that this was the first of many conversations on the matter. The following week, an HR memo was posted around the office stating that it was inappropriate for coworkers to leave personal notes in another's workspace. All correspondence should be sent via email. I appreciated the effort, but knew this was a fruitless gesture from HR. Over the next month and a half, I made multiple trips to the HR office. Not only had the notes continued, but they escalated. My admirer rambled endlessly about how heartless I was, how angry I had made them, and the violent things they would do to me if I didn't respond soon. It was becoming exhausting. During my last week in the office, there was a hot pink sticky note on my computer monitor. I was at a breaking point. The notes wouldn't stop. HR didn't know who was leaving them, and my place of work was doing nothing to put an end to this. I had even called the cops. They took a statement but seemed to laugh it off. At that moment, I would have done anything to get it to end. The note offered the option.
I get it. You're not interested. I'll back off, but only if you'll meet me tonight. I'll be on the 5th level of the parking garage near the stairwell exit, 8 p.m. Don't be late. XOXO.
It was 7:58 p.m. when I stepped out of the elevator onto the 5th floor of the parking garage. My heart was racing and a cold trail of sweat ran down my back. From my position near the elevator, I had a clear view of the stairwell door about 200 feet away. No one was there, so I made my way in that direction to see if I could find them. Suddenly, a red ember glowed brightly in the shadow cast by the door. Someone was smoking a cigarette in the darkness. The muscles in my body tightened as I willed myself forward. My admirer was there, shrouded in the darkness. "Hello?" I called out. A cloud of smoke billowed from the shadow. "It's Paul. You wanted to meet me?" A woman stepped out of the shadow and dropped the cigarette to the ground, grinding it with her shoe. Something in her left hand reflected the abrasive fluorescent light from overhead. It was my wife, Emily. A gun was clenched in the fist. "Emily?" I questioned. "What the hell are you doing?"
I left the notes as a test. A few days a month, I stop in your office on my way to work and leave notes. The cleaning crew thinks I work here, I guess,
she said, her face streaming with tears.
I thought after all the trouble you had from the affair, you would tell me if someone was trying to steal you away from me again.
You left the notes? I stammered. I don't get it.
I wanted to be sure you wouldn't try to meet another woman again,
she said, lifting the gun toward me.
But you did. Here you are, trying to meet some easy score.
Emily, you can't be serious, I shouted. I came here to get this to stop. Why are you doing this?
I knew you would,
she said, but was cut off by the interruption of police sirens. She looked toward the ramp at the flashing blue and red lights.
You called the police?
I looked at her, jaw clenched, unable to speak. Of course I did! I exclaimed. I thought someone was going to hurt me if I... The thunder of a gunshot was all I heard before the world went black. I woke up in a hospital. My entire body ached. There were thick white bandages wrapped around my midsection. A nurse saw that I was conscious and ran to find the doctor. A police officer was in a chair beside me. After my physician entered the room, they explained that my wife had shot me in the abdomen and fled the scene. A manhunt was underway, but they hadn't located her yet. A protective detail would remain with me at the hospital until I was released. They never found her. That was about 5 years ago. I've relocated since then. New state, new job, new life. It's been relatively peaceful until recently. Yesterday, I headed into the office a bit before the sun came up. When I turned on the light, there it was. A bright yellow note on the center of my computer monitor.
I hope you enjoyed She Loves Me Not, as written by Ryan Major and performed by Michelle Kane and Nick Goroff. Our second tale of the evening is written by Marcus Damanda and performed by Michelle Kane, Danielle Hewitt, Melissa Medina, Geoff Sturtevant, and myself, Steve Taylor. In it, we meet a girl visiting her friend after a devastating loss. Now, without further ado, I present to you My Best Friend's Mirror.
I approached the house warily, unsure of myself in spite of the open invitation. A full week had passed since Chandra's grandmother had died, and I hadn't seen my best friend since the graveside service 3 days ago. She hadn't answered any of my texts. In the end, I had to call her mother, not my favorite thing to do, especially under these circumstances. But Mrs. Barkley had passed me over straight away. She'd even been polite about it, and that was a first. She was nice to you today, I reminded myself, starting up the driveway. Be nice back. She's grieving. Chandra's grandma was Mrs. Barkley's mother. Family was still in town. I could hear their muffled voices from inside as I came out to the porch and patted the front of my blouse straight. I took a breath and knocked, remembering to use the actual knocker instead of my knuckles. Mrs. Barkley opened the door herself. Mrs. Barkley, listen, I'm so sorry. Before I could ready myself for it, she wrapped me in a hug.
Oh, Lorraine,
she said while I was still blinking away the shock. She kissed me on the cheek.
Mwah, such a good and true friend. Thank you for coming. Chandra's going to need a good friend right now, I think. Come in, come in.
I went by Rainey, and she knew it, but I didn't think now was a good time to bring that up. Instead, I stepped inside, still rather shaken. Stares from everywhere. There had to be 10 other people in here, all of them older than me, most of them older than Mr. and Mrs. Barkley. And all but 2 of them were women. Apart from Chandra's parents, I could see Mr. Barkley through the kitchen out the back porch, alone, having a cigarette. I didn't know any of them. Not for the first time, it occurred to me. Chandra was my best friend, and I didn't know shit about her family.
Introductions,
Mrs. Barkley said, and set to it at once. Turns out, Chandra had quite the collection of aunts and great-aunts and older cousins living around the country. But I only met 8 of them. The other 2, the men, joined Mr. Barkley outside as soon as Mrs. Barkley started showing me around. Finally, after putting me through an excruciating 15 minutes of prim handshaking and forced sympathetic smiles, Mrs. Barkley led me to the stairway. Is she okay? I ventured, unaccountably nervous. I mean, dumb question, I know, but...
She will be,
Mrs. Barkley said. Then she lowered her voice.
You help her. Can she trust you? Truly trust you?
Her eyes narrowed, and the Mrs. Barkley I had always known briefly resurfaced.
Today, that is, this morning, well, it's been a big day for her.
Always, Mrs. Barkley. You can count on me.
Go on then,
she said, nodding up the stairs.
By now, she knows you're here.
It should be Chandra telling this story, not me. She was the special one, and this story really is about her. Everything was always about her. We were friends long before either of us was concerned about things like status or money. We were besties before either of us knew what it was to be popular at school. And after we did know, after she became popular, well, I became popular too, because I was her friend. It should be Chandra telling this story, not me. But she won't. So, I have to. Just outside of her closed bedroom door, I stopped. Dimly, I could hear her talking on the other side of it, her voice conspiratorial, close to a whisper. I heard her giggle. Someone was in there with her. Then she caught her breath. I heard her open the drawer and close it. Then, in her normal voice, she said,
"It's open, Rainey. Come on in."
I did, and the first thing I noticed was her phone. It sat on top of her dresser, powered off. I went to it at once. "I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. I've been worried to death." She smiled that sweet, cherubic smile of hers.
"You sound like my mother."
I picked up her phone and hit the power button. Nothing. Dead. Really? Her bright blue eyes studied me, quizzical but unconcerned. "Who are you talking to?" I asked, plugging her phone in for her.
"Grandma Stevens,"
she said.
"How are you?"
My heart caught in my throat. I set her phone down and went to her. I drew her into a hug, squeezing tight. I wanted to cry, but I knew I couldn't. It was Chandra's time to cry.
"Rainey, it's fine,"
she said, rubbing my back.
"I'm okay. But listen, I want to show you something."
I stood back, palmed my eyes dry, humphed at myself. Fine job I'd done keeping my cool. "Yeah," I said with a small laugh. Chandra sounded perfectly normal. Surreal. Then she brought it out, gently with cautious fingers, drawing it forth from the middle drawer of her desk and propping it up right in front of herself and looking directly into it. "Chandra," I said, honestly stupefied. "That was supposed to go to your mother, wasn't it?" It was a small antique desktop makeup mirror, oval in shape. The actual mirror was no longer than my iPhone. Totally pointless when lined up in front of the larger wall mirror behind it. But it was also beautiful, with a golden swivel stand and frame, embossed with leaf tracery and embedded with finely cut ruby red gemstones that might have been real rubies for all I knew. The base consisted of 4 perfectly symmetrical rose petal anaglyphs, also gold. Her smile faded but didn't die.
"It was supposed to,"
she said.
"But it didn't."
If there was some kind of rule here that I was unaware of, this would be the time to tell me. Let me guess, I said. Deep, dark family secret. Tell no one, Chandra, or the dreaded family curse will...
Sort of.
Chandra allowed with a small laugh.
God, Rainey. Keep an open mind about it.
I nodded. I'd try.
I'm allowed to tell one person outside of blood relatives.
She said, beaming.
I chose you, of course.
Then she looked into the mirror intently, as though studying it, or listening.
Not everyone can do it. Mom tried last night. She did her best. She was so upset.
Do what? She leaned forward on her elbows. For a time, she seemed to lose herself in the reflection. When she spoke again, I didn't think she was talking to me.
It's okay. You know her. It's fine.
Which, beyond just being creepy, made me uncomfortable. But then she sat back, turned to me, and sighed.
The mirror remembers,
she said.
Every face it's ever seen, every word spoken to it, everyone who's ever owned it. All of it is still there.
Chandra, that's...
Open mind, Rainey,
she repeated.
I've spoken up for you. Don't make me regret it.
I bit back what I was going to say. Chandra wasn't like this. Unlike her parents, she was as normal and down-to-earth as a person could be. And that last thing? That had sounded more than a little threatening. You have my full attention. She faced the mirror again. I pulled up the second chair, sat next to her. Saw both of us in the mirror, side by side.
I've known about it forever,
she said.
Sorry. Wasn't allowed to talk about it before today. Not even to you. And I didn't believe it. To hear it from Grandma, it was just an old family legend. A secret story that got passed down with the mirror. Nothing you would take seriously. But Mom took it seriously.
I nodded. Chandra's mom took everything seriously. I bet she did. I allowed, inviting more. Her eyes never left the mirror. I didn't understand. Our reflection was just that, a mere reflection. No ghosts, no whispers from beyond the grave. But I had to admit that the mirror was beautiful. A treasure among treasures in a family bloated with old money. There sure wasn't anything like it in my house.
Mom was so pissed last night,
Chandra said.
She spent hours looking into it, Rainey. Like it might suddenly just activate for her. When she finally gave up, I thought she might actually throw the mirror, she got so mad. Seriously looked like she was going to break it.
Good thing she didn't, I said, and regretted my next words as soon as they slipped out of my lips. Your grandma wouldn't have liked that.
She's here,
Chandra said.
Grandma, I mean. But only I can see her. Only I can hear what she's saying.
But how? This doesn't make any sense. I mean, for argument's sake, let's say that the mirror really is magical. I still don't understand how you'd be able to see her right now. Look, I gestured in front of our faces. We take up the whole thing. There's no room, Chandra.
Sure there is,
she replied, tapping the glass.
You look just like normal, right?
Uh-huh, I said, drawing the syllables out, waiting for God only knew what kind of crazy to come out of her mouth next.
My hair's normal too,
she said, flicking a long blonde lock over one shoulder.
So are my clothes, even my earrings. But it's her face I see, Rainey, not mine.
I took it in.
Or one of the others.
She went on.
The ones who came before her. Whoever it is, I see them as they were when they were my age. And they talk to me.
I couldn't reward her trust with accusation or denial. I needed advice, and she needed help.
Rainey, come on. Say something. This is the coolest thing ever.
She looked so sincere, so happy. I was completely useless until I had an idea, something I could say without lying about what I was actually feeling at the moment. What would have happened if your mom had broken the mirror? She thought about it, or looked like she did. Only after she answered my question did I realize she hadn't been thinking at all. She'd been listening, waiting for the answer before passing it on to me.
It would have been bad,
she eventually said, drawing from her tissue box and polishing away the smudges her fingers had made.
You don't want to know.
It should be Chandra telling this story, not me. She's the one who had the magic mirror. It should be her explaining what happened, or no one at all. But she was only allowed to tell one person, and that person was me. Now I'm breaking that trust by telling everyone. It doesn't matter. There's nothing anyone can do about it anymore.
It's like she dropped off the face of the earth,
Lucas said, checking his phone again.
Least she can do is answer.
He was my on-again, off-again boyfriend. Currently, we were off. He stood with his back to me, facing into his open locker, which was, unfortunately just now, opposite mine, and waited. I stowed my math and chemistry binders, replaced them with lit and government. Not sure what you want out of me, I said. It was Chandra's 8th absence in a row, a full week since I had last seen her in person. She'd kept her phone charged, and that was something. Or it would have been, except she didn't bother answering anyone's messages other than mine. And what she'd said to me wasn't exactly reassuring. In fact, it didn't make any sense. A few days ago, I had texted her, "Are you all right? Coming to school today?" Her reply, which I heard in my mind as though she were speaking aloud, was,
Did you know my great-great-great-grandmother Stinson had tickets for the Titanic's return voyage to England? Talk about a funny way to have your trip canceled.
Lucas returned me to the present.
You're her best friend, right?
He asked, as if he didn't know. Look, I've been over to see her twice. I'm texting her all the time. By the end of my last message, I was practically begging her. Come on, Chandra. They're asking about you every day. I don't know what to tell them. I can't cover for you forever. It was like she noticed I was texting her, but ignored everything I said.
It's a window into the past, Rainey. I wish you could see it. I'd show you everything if I could.
Lucas, meanwhile, remained my window back to the here and now. I was tempted to tell him about the mirror right then. For the first time, I felt like I had to tell someone. Chandra and I had the same guidance counselor. Maybe?
I just don't get it,
Lucas said.
It's not like she lost her actual mom or anything.
That made my jaw drop. Lucas knew how close Chandra had been to her grandma Stevens, but I recovered quickly enough. Wow, I said, slamming my locker shut. You know what? Fuck you. I could see it, the hot blood in his cheeks, the instant regret. He was about to stutter out some kind of lame apology I didn't want to hear. I stalked off before he could. Guidance was no help. Mrs. Corbett assured me, in between long explanations of why she couldn't say anything specific due to student confidentiality, that she'd already tried reaching out to Chandra by phone. Reading between the lines, I gathered the school truancy officer had been in touch with her folks. Be her friend, she told me. Sit with her. Listen. Oh yeah, that's helpful. Thanks a buttload, Mrs. Corbett. If she couldn't tell me anything that was actually useful, no way was I going to spill Chandra's secret to her. If I had told her, whatever she did with the information, I knew that I wouldn't be a part of it, and Chandra, likely as not, would learn of the betrayal. No, there was only one way I could fix this. That's what I told myself when I made the decision. I didn't admit the truth, not even to myself.
I can't come back to school,
Chandra said, rolling her eyes at me like I was being silly.
Rainey, the mirror is my responsibility now. I won't let anything happen to it.
She was in front of the vanity again, the mirror propped up in front of her like always. The gift I'd brought for her was right next to it, still in its wrapping paper. At least she was looking at me this time and keeping to the topic at hand. "Oh, please," I said. "What's going to happen to it?" But it really was quite beautiful. Inwardly, I could understand her not wanting to take chances.
I don't know,
she answered, turning her attention back to the vanity. I took her by the chin and returned her gaze where it belonged, to the living. "What?" I said, cutting her off as gently as I could. "Chandra, what? What are they telling you?" Her family in the real world, every one of them, as far as I knew, believed in this magic. They would have no trouble believing what it said. I couldn't help but acknowledge the possibility, however faint, that if that many people believed, they might actually be right. I brushed that thought aside. I had been brushing it aside all week, but now that I was in the room with that thing again, I wouldn't have minded a chance to sit in front of the mirror all by myself. Just for a few minutes, I told myself. See if anything happens.
They say I can't trust her,
Chandra whispered.
Not yet.
Who?
My mother.
That froze the conversation. Mrs. Barkley, upon first greeting me at the door this afternoon, had asked if I'd come to finally talk some sense into her. I supposed that I had, but I'd also come for more than that, for a final end to this drama, as I repeatedly told myself. Nothing more than that. And there was nothing else I could do. My God, Chandra, that's what the mirror told you?
My mother put you up to this,
Chandra said, eyes narrowing.
Didn't she?
Chandra, no, I said with feeling. Of course not. You want the truth, though? I've heard from just about everyone else you know.
She wants to separate us,
Chandra insisted.
She'll try the mirror again herself. And when it doesn't work...
It was plausible. I could picture it. I reminded myself to focus. Stop, I said, then pointed to the big mirror, the wall vanity. Chandra, look at yourself. Just yourself. Please. She did, frowning. For all I knew, it was the first time she had consciously studied her own face in days. Normally, she was pretty, even without makeup, but now there were bags under her eyes. Her complexion was sickly, sallow. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. All those women in the mirror, I said, sidling up next to her. Those great-great-grandmothers and great-aunts. The one who talked about surviving the Chicago fire. The one who visited King Tut's tomb when it first opened. The ones who traveled the world, saw history being made as it happened. She was cracking, slowly but noticeably cracking. Her eyes misted. They didn't stop living when the mirror was passed down to them, I pointed out, careful to keep my voice soft, my tone understanding. Did they?
No,
she answered. It was barely a breath, then more strongly.
My God, I look awful.
You have to come back, I said matter-of-factly. Sooner or later, the freaking Cutter cops are going to roll the goddamn paddy wagon up your driveway and lock you up for skipping. She snorted.
And I'm supposed to just trust my mother.
Not if you absolutely can't, I said with a sigh. I reached out and tapped the still-wrapped present I had brought for her. Chandra sniffed, wiped her nose with a tissue, and unwrapped the gift. Then she blinked her eyes at me in shock. It was a lockbox, polished rosewood on the outside, just big enough for her mirror to lie flat on the inside. I lifted the lid, gestured to the box's interior, which was all plushy pink cushioning and one small key. Bring the mirror with you. Leave it in your locker. No one will even know. The secret will keep.
But your dad gave you that.
Yeah, guess it never occurred to him that I wear pretty much every accessory I have, every day. I don't need storage, Chandra. It's fine. Her eyes lit up. Thank God, she smiled. And ever so carefully, she lifted her magic mirror and set it inside. The fit was snug. There'd be no rattling around, no matter what. Perfect. Then she hugged me, cried a little into my shoulder.
Thank you,
she said. You coming back? I pressed, hugging her in return. No way was I letting this issue go. Not now.
Yes,
she assured me.
Rainey, you're the best.
That was part 1 of the plan, perfectly executed. For that much, I could have contented myself that I had done my duty as her friend. Only there was a part 2 of the plan as well. I promised myself that it was necessary, that her obsession would get the better of her sooner or later. Maybe it would have. I'll never know, because I had an obsession too. And what's totally inexcusable is my obsession was the same as hers. The thing about lockboxes, most of them don't come with only one key. There's usually a spare. I waited. I was patient. I helped Chandra catch up in AP, English, and Geometry, and Lucas helped her tackle what she'd missed in chemistry. This was a peace gesture aimed directly at me, but I didn't say anything about it. As far as I could tell, no one ever found out about the family heirloom Chandra brought into school for safekeeping. But she never forgot it. Every day, Chandra spent a little more time at her locker than she should have. Good thing we were in the same locker hall, or she would have developed a serious tardy issue. It also allowed me, after only a few careful observations, to learn her combination. I watched her put it in again. 1 turn right, 4. 2 turns left, 24. Half a turn right, 0. While her eyes remained fixed on the lockbox, I closed my eyes and again repeated to myself, 4, 24, 0. Not such a good thing that we shared the locker hall with Lucas.
What's in the box?
He asked from behind, making us jump. It was Monday morning, the start of Chandra's 3rd full week back. We were supposed to be on our way to first period, and I was packed up and ready to go. Chandra still had her locker open. The lockbox was on the top shelf, as always, and safely shut. She never opened it at school. She whirled on him.
Just a little something I like to call none of your business, Snoop.
Lucas smirked, waved it off. Then he raised an eyebrow at me. What? I asked. He made a sad face.
You still hate me?
Chandra slammed her locker shut, slung her backpack over her shoulder.
Yes,
she said before I had a chance to answer.
Doesn't everyone?
But she winked over her shoulder at him as she set off for homeroom, leaving us alone.
Well?
He said. No, I surrendered. I don't hate you, Lucas. Not much, anyway.
Not that,
he said, smiling winsomely, unconcerned.
No one can hate me for long.
He nodded back to Chandra's locker.
What's in the box?
Seconds passed. This time, we were the ones who were going to be late if we didn't get going. But every day, I'd stood by Chandra's side while her locker was open, ostensibly to shield the box from view. I knew she'd never open it here. And yet, I couldn't help but wish she would, just so I could have a quick glimpse of it.
Wow,
Lucas said.
someone's got a big secret. Just look at you. You want to tell me. I can see it.
Obnoxiously, he pointed.
Right there. Right in your eyes. Come on. What's in the box?
I pushed his hand away, considered, then said, "Not much, just the ghosts of a bunch of dead women." Lucas was crestfallen.
Fine,
He said,
be that way.
and walked with me to homeroom. Along the way, my phone vibrated an incoming text. But I waited until first period got going to check it under the desk. The message was from Mrs. Barkley.
Where is it?
Fuck it, I thought. Go time. In third period, I got a bathroom pass from Mr. Sanders. It was the nearest class I had to the locker hall. There, I hesitated, but not for too long. In the middle of third period, the halls were pretty much deserted, but you couldn't be too careful. Quickly, I dialed in the combination, opened it, snatched up the box, and held it in my hands. I still had the second key. I could look into the mirror right now. I transferred it to my locker instead. Texted Lucas, "I need a favor, can't wait. Next period, between classes." Generally, Chandra and I wouldn't meet until later. She wouldn't be here. Others would, but I'd only be getting things from my locker this time, not hers. I didn't expect Lucas to answer right away. He'd be in class and the timing might not be right, but he did.
For you, anything.
I knew it would be bad, meeting Chandra in the locker hall at the end of the day. I took my time getting there, partly out of sheer dread, mostly out of guilt. But there was no avoiding this encounter. Our lockers were right next to each other. When I rounded the final corner that led into the locker hall, I could hear her from 50 feet away.
"It was here. Right here. And only she knew what was in it."
I picked up my pace, even as Lucas retreated from her. He was headed my way, head down. From a distance, he mouthed the word, "Go," at me. And I could see why. Any second now, Chandra might turn half a circle and see me. At present, she was screaming her head off at our SRO.
"Thief! The fucking thief stole it from me. Do you understand?"
There was a wide semicircle of students all about her, but they kept their distance. Chandra's face had gone blotchy pink with fury, her eyes glassy with rage. Officer Yates held his hands out, palm up.
Whoa, Chandra, easy with the language. We'll figure it out. Just calm down a bit, all right?
"Why?
She demanded, still shouting.
What are you gonna do about it anyway? You can't even get my name right. Do you have any idea how serious this is?"
Then her voice dropped.
"That mirror is worth more than you make in a year. Fucking rent-a-cop."
Oh boy, I thought, accelerating my pace nearly to a run. This is going well. Lucas tried to intercept me,
Rainy, no. Not a good idea right now.
but I pushed past him. He kept going too, but in the opposite direction, towards the exit. Good. "Chandra!" I called out, slowing to a stop only after I stood inside the half ring of spectators, keeping our SRO safely between us. "Chandra, what's wrong? What happened?" I felt the burn in my cheeks before she reeled on me.
"I'm surprised you showed up, thief."
I turned to look into her locker, made my eyes go wide. Holy shit. Oh my God, Sandra, no! It didn't have anything to do with...
"Like hell you didn't,"
she said, the slits of her eyes oozing liquid betrayal.
"When did you decide to do it? How long have you been waiting for your chance?"
She whirled on Officer Yates.
"Open her locker, mall cop. I know you have a key."
Officer Yates's features darkened in return.
Chandra, you can just stop with...
"I'll do it myself," I said, forcing a few tears of my own. It wasn't hard to do. As for Officer Yates opening my locker, he had every right to, and probably would just as soon as he got done correcting Chandra's attitude. This was all part of the plan, completely predictable. Why did I feel like such a piece of shit doing it? I flung my locker open. Then, for good measure, I zipped open my backpack and spilled its contents at Chandra's feet. Unsatisfied, she snatched the backpack from my hands and rummaged through it. Officer Yates, meanwhile, stepped up to my open locker and looked it up and down, shaking his head.
Where is it?
Chandra moaned, hitching breath, sobbed.
Where is it?
Odd, I thought. Exactly what your crazy-ass mom wanted to know 2 hours ago. Back where it was exactly where it was supposed to be. My phone vibrated on the floor, face down, rattling over tiles. Not now. God, not now.
She's your friend, Chandra,
Officer Yates said, stepping back.
In her shoes, I don't know if I'd want to be after this, but she's your friend. She didn't do it.
I palmed a cheek dry, put my hands on my hips, and waited. Chandra dropped my book bag, then pushed past a couple of students and rapped on Lucas's locker.
Open it,
she said, without deigning to look at Officer Yates and without offering up so much as a please or an explanation. When it became clear neither of them paid my phone any attention, I knelt to the floor and scooped it up, stealing a quick glance at the screen before stuffing it and the rest of my shit into my book bag. It was Mrs. Barkley again.
What are you up to, Lorraine?
I didn't have any clear notion myself. Maybe you should text your daughter, I thought. She's closer to the truth than she thinks.
Fucking open it!
She shrieked. Officer Yates stared at me as though for help. I shrugged. Maybe you should, I said. It's just Lucas. He won't care. And it won't be in there either. It was all I had to say. Everyone knew Lucas. He was just that kind of guy. The natural, harmless goof, infectious personality, ridiculously popular, and easygoing as they came. Also, everyone knew we were a thing time to time. It better not be in there, I thought as our SRO drew his keyring from his belt. Right about now, if Lucas was doing what he was supposed to be doing, the lockbox and the mirror would both be on their way out of the building. But when Yates opened the locker and the lockbox was nowhere in sight, I let out my breath. When Chandra's anger started to melt on the spot, dissolving into equal parts guilt and despair, it felt even worse. There was a real chance I could get sick. I turned from her, from everyone, and ran. I'd like to say that I had no idea where I was going, no idea what to do. I'd like to be able to wrap this story up with a sudden epiphany of conscience, followed by difficult but necessary action. But that's not what happened. And the farther I got from them, the closer I got to the parking lot exit and Lucas's car, the better I felt. I had to see Lucas, escape with him. Now that it was safe, I had to get that fucking mirror back. I had to look at it. Just in case. I wasn't expecting to see anything. Well, not really. It should be Chandra telling this story, not me. She was the one the mirror had called to, the one that generations of strong, adventurous, powerful women had selected to be the beneficiary of its wisdom. I still don't know why. She hadn't handled it well. At least not at what was supposed to be only the beginning of a long stewardship. Maybe she would have grown into it over time. Hard to say. Chandra should be telling this story, but she never will. She can't. Lucas's house was dark when he pulled his well-worn Ford Fiesta into the driveway. Neither of his parents would be home from work until at least 7 o'clock. That was good, as far as today was concerned. I did not want to bring the lockbox home yet. There might be phone calls. Lucas parked the car, pocketed his keys.
Okay,
he said. It was the first thing I'd heard from him since school. He hadn't even spoken while letting me into the car.
Please explain what we just did.
That box has a mirror in it, I said, staring down into my lap. She's been obsessing over it since Grandma Stevens died. She thinks she sees Grandma Stevens in her own reflection. Other dead family members, too. She talks to them. He closed his eyes, shook his head at nothing. I've seen her do it, Lucas. That's what kept her home all this time. She was wasting the fuck away looking into that thing. Overstatement, maybe, but that was my excuse, and I stuck to it.
She came back, though.
He insisted.
Rainey, she was pretty much back to normal. You already fixed the problem. What the hell happens now?
He reached around behind the driver's seat to the back. I caught his hand. No, I said, checking the street through the back window. Bring it inside first. And she wasn't all right. You don't know her like I do. She's...
Still delusional?
Bring it inside, I said. Then, I don't know. We'll see. We took the box out of the backpack while we were still in the entryway foyer. I set it on the dining room table, produced a spare key from my back pocket, and opened the box. My breath caught. The mirror was there, no mistaking it. Yet it had changed. The golden swivel stand and frame, the leaf tracery, even the rose petal anaglyphs, had all gone as black as graveyard gate iron. The rubies surrounding the glass were now a dull, unlovely green. The reflection that stared back at me was warped, distorted, as though I was looking at myself through the mirror of a funhouse. And I couldn't see Lucas behind me at all.
Huh.
Lucas said.
If I'd spent days looking into that thing, I'd be crazy by now, too.
Can you see anything in it?
No, nothing. You?
I shook my head. This isn't right. The mirror isn't right. Let's bring it to your room. Set it on your dresser. It was an impulse, an entirely irrational hope I couldn't fight down. The mirror wasn't meant for dining rooms, I told myself. It belonged in a bedroom. I no longer had any doubt the thing was magical. Apart from the change in its appearance, the fact that Lucas, a boy, couldn't see even a distorted version of himself in the glass was proof enough.
Rainey.
What else do you have to do? Come on, Lucas. Trust me. He started for the stairs, grumbling under his breath. I put the mirror back in the box and followed him. Lucas's room was as modest as the rest of the place, but he did have a desk and a dresser. He pulled the rolling chair out from the desk and gestured I should have a seat.
Be my guest,
he said.
Don't know what you expect to get out of this, but...
I pushed the door shut with the back of my foot and pointed to the dresser, where 3 of Lucas's trophies occupied most of the space. Gut instinct, I said. He sighed, setting the trophies down on his bed.
This is stupid, you know.
I know, I freely admitted, retrieving the mirror, still black, and setting it down in the middle. Through it, I saw something that made no sense.
Rainey?
It was as though a window had opened up through space, and I was peering out from the surface of Chandra's vanity and into her bedroom. From here, I could make out the red velvet coverlet on her bed, her 2 Sailor Moon pillows propped against the headboard. There was her closet, half open as usual, the white carpeting as immaculate as ever, but no Chandra. She wouldn't have had time to get home by now, as I reminded myself. Lucas and I got the hell out of Dodge like our feet were on fire. Chandra was probably still filing the report with Officer Yates.
Rainey.
Lucas tried again. I waved him off. Then gasped. Mrs. Barkley had come into the room. At first, I only saw her from the shoulders down as she stalked first this way and then that around the room.
Where are you?
She seethed into the empty air. There was no one else. She was utterly alone. I could see it all so clearly. It was like I was there.
Where have you taken it, you interfering little bitch?
How is this possible? Was this how it had been for her, Mrs. Barkley, when she had first tried to see in the mirror? Had she only been able to see outward to the room where the mirror truly belonged?
Rainy, answer me!
That was from the real world, from right next to me, but the voice might as well have been half a mile away. I had enough presence of mind to make a shushing gesture at him, though my eyes remained fixed on the mirror. Mrs. Barkley sat down at the vanity, right where the mirror would have been where it should have been. I had to give it back. This wasn't going to work. She was looking at me, or seemed to be, her focus just half an inch off or so.
I know what you did,
she said.
I've spoken to Chandra. In 2 hours, if you haven't returned the mirror to us, every living family member I have will know where you live. We'll come for it ourselves. It won't be the first time the family has had to do this.
Her eyes grew in my mind. I hardly blinked. Her voice remained steady.
We will reclaim what is ours,
she said. A hand on my shoulder.
We'll kill your mother. Everyone will get a piece. I'll pry her eyes out one at a time with a butter knife.
My chest hurt. I could almost hear my heart thudding.
We'll kill your father. I'll let Chandra punch a screwdriver through his temple over and over until it comes out gray with his brains.
Again from Lucas.
Rainy, what's going on? Your face just went fucking white.
His hand on my upper arm. He was going to ease me away, but I wrenched free. Wait, I said, my voice weak in my own ears.
Or?
Mrs. Barkley said, holding up a finger and smiling, winking. Her eyes, presumably not knowing exactly where to look, never quite centered on mine.
You can be a good little thief and give back what you have stolen. So callous, Rainy. This isn't who you are.
Next to me, but still sounding far away, Lucas asked,
Rainy, what do you see in that thing?
I held up a finger as though to say, give me a minute. I brushed away tears. Through the mirror, I had heard Chandra's bedroom door open again. And there she was, just behind her mom, bending at the waist so they were head level with each other, their cheeks nearly pressed.
You almost had me believing you, Rainy.
Chandra said.
Are you with Lucas now? Say hi to him for me, okay?
Chandra says hi. I dutifully reported, hardly hearing the words myself. I'll bring it back, I thought. I understand now. I'm sorry. Please don't hurt my family.
I'm ready to forgive you, Rainy,
she said. But that was more than Lucas could take. He swatted the mirror away. I shrieked, unable to track its progress through the air, still frozen in place where I sat. But I heard it land on the floor, which was carpeted like Chandra's.
I don't know what's happening to you two,
he said.
But it's evil.
My muscles unclenched. I was suddenly free. My vision focused, took on the reality of where I really was. Lucas raised his foot over the mirror. No! I shouted. Lucas, stop! He brought it down, hard, the heel of his sneaker shattering glass with a small anticlimactic crunch. The first scream came from Chandra, high-pitched and shrill and piercing in its agony. The second came from her mother, a low wailing born of terror, outrage, and despair. The third came from me as I dropped to my knees and beheld the scattered shards of fractured mirror that Lucas had stomped into the carpet. Each one of them retained only Chandra's image, not her mother's, and each one only showed a small portion of her face. A cheek here, half an eye there, the upper part of an ear. The parts that showed her mouth trembled, rattling in place, filling the room with her dying cries. There was no doubt she was dying. The glass bled everywhere. Chandra's broken face lay in jagged, bleeding pieces all about the mirror frame. After she went silent, I heard only her mother.
How could you, you stupid, heartless bitch! Oh, Chandra, no. Oh, my little girl. Look what they've done to you.
Desperately, I brushed pieces of broken glass into my hands, wailing at no one and nothing, cutting myself as I frantically tried to put it back together. The mirror, the glass, my friend's scrambled face. Lucas was at my back, trying to haul me off the floor, shouting things into my ear that didn't register as words and that I'll never remember. My ears filled with the lamentations of long-departed spirits now exiting the mirror, banished to wherever it was the newly dead went, when they had no anchor left to keep them in this world. First was Grandma Stevens, howling and despondent, and then the others, one at a time, rising in volume until I had to cover my ears, then falling suddenly silent, as though flipped off by a switch. And I knew, with absolute surety, that 8 miles from here, Chandra lay dead on her own floor, her face bashed to pieces. Mrs. Barkley would have been right there to see it come apart.
There,
Lucas said, standing back for me as I heaved in breath, still on my knees.
It's over, Rainey. Taken care of. End of story.
I turned a shard of glass this way and that, held it up to the light. No blood. But I knew better. I think it must have been the onset of shock, the calm that overtook me then. Carefully now, noting that my hands were already cut from trying to gather the pieces too quickly, I plucked them up one at a time. If you're right, then Chandra's still alive, I said. I suppose we better make sure. One quick pass by the front of her house should do the trick. The words came out leaden, dead. I knew better. Only Lucas now needed to see. We're murderers, I said, setting the first small pile of shards on his desk. We'll confirm, just so you get it.
Rainey, goddamn, what now?
His tone was so exasperated it was almost endearing. I knelt again to gather up the frame, more glass. We're fucked, Lucas. I can't imagine what the police thought when they first set foot inside Chandra's bedroom. But they were definitely out in force by the time Lucas and I drove past the house. 6 cars at least, red and blue lights silently swirling. And an ambulance that beeped and backed its way out of the driveway with its siren off. I almost asked Lucas to stop. Part of me wanted to run to the cops right then and tell them everything. If I went to the loony bin or jail, maybe Mrs. Barkley and her relatives would leave my parents alone. But I was indecisive. I was frightened. And I didn't share any part of my idea with Lucas, who regarded the crowded driveway of the Barkley estate in wide-eyed terror, an expression that showed that he, being the bright boy that he is, did indeed finally understand. I was looking over my shoulder through the back window when I saw Mrs. Barkley led out through the front door of her house in handcuffs. I turned in the seat, faced forward again. There are so many layers of fucked up in this, I thought. I'll never even find the bottom.
What now?
Lucas asked. He was visibly shaken, his eyes bloodshot.
And what do we do with that? That thing?
He indicated the bag in my lap. Inside were the remains of the enchanted mirror that, together, we had so recklessly destroyed. I'm not putting all of this on Lucas, not even half of it. I know whose fault it really was. But one way or another, he was neck deep in it now. Go to the dump, I said. we fucking bury it. Along the side of the road, I caught a glimpse of a police officer with a camera, catching every car that drove by him for the public record. So, Mom, that's what it is. That's how Lucas and I killed my best friend and ruined her family's magic. I know you won't believe any of this at first. Neither will Dad. Just do this one thing for me, okay? I'm only trying to stay out of sight long enough for you to do it. Lucas agrees. We're not fugitives. Wouldn't even know enough to stay successfully hidden very long, even if we had a mind to try. Take the story to the cops. They won't buy it either, but maybe it'll be enough to clear Mrs. Barkley. Maybe me telling the truth will help keep you and Dad safe from her. I've told you this before, but now I'm sure of it. Mrs. Barkley is innocent, but she's also insane. That whole family's crazy enough to make good on Mrs. Barkley's threat. Believe that, if nothing else. Tell the police. Get help. Maybe they could put you and Dad in some kind of witness protection thing until it's safe. If it ever is. And don't worry about me. I am as good as dead already. Probably Lucas, too. They'll never forgive us. They are going to kill us someday. Somehow. I hope it'll be enough for them, even if they do it with pain. I'll do everything I can to be careful, but I don't think it'll be enough in the long run. They'll want blood for blood, and for their lost magic. In their place, wouldn't you? I don't even blame them. I'm sorry, Mom. So sorry.
I hope you enjoyed My Best Friend's Mirror, as written by Marcus Damanda and performed by Michelle Kane, Danielle Hewitt, Melissa Medina, Geoff Sturtevant, and myself, Steve Taylor. On to the shows. Longtime resident Otis Gyrie has his very own show here on our network, Scary Stories Told in the Dark, which you can hear every Sunday night. We also have Eric Peabody's Horror Hill, a podcast dedicated to some of our deeper and darker tales. We hope you check him out. And Drew Blood's Dark Tales airs Fridays, featuring some southern down-home horror. And don't forget to check out the Fear from the Heartland archives, featuring more than 120 episodes. Well, friends, our weekly descent into the depths has just about come to a close. But before we go, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for joining us for tonight, and remind you to take a moment to stop by our iTunes page and leave Chilling Tales for Dark Nights a 5-star review and a kind word, and follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram if you haven't already. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can find an archive of our work going back to 2012, and consider signing up as a patron at our website, chillingtalesfordarknights.com, to show your support and get all of our content ad-free. I'm your host of the evening, Steve Taylor, and it's been a pleasure. Tune in again next week when we once again turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Sweet dreams, listener. Sweet dreams.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.